I know it hurts, but we'll get through this.
Lillian woke to the soft glow of the early morning sun spilling through her bedroom window. The air smelled faintly of coffee from the cafe downstairs, a comforting aroma that had become part of her morning ritual. She stretched, feeling the familiar stiffness of her back from hours spent hunched over her laptop the night before, and smiled faintly. Today was Sunday, a day meant for rest, for catching her breath after a week of work, of small disappointments and fleeting victories. Her phone buzzed on the nightstand. It was a message from James, her best friend, her anchor in a life that often felt chaotic. "Morning, Lillian. I'm on my way. Coffee." She smiled, heart lifting. James had been her constant since college, the one person who had never let her down, who had always been there with a joke, a shoulder, a plan when life seemed to collapse. She replied, "Coffee sounds perfect. See you soon." Within the hour, James knocked on her door, carrying 2 steaming mugs of her favorite blend. His smile was the same one she had fallen into the habit of relying on for years, warm, steady, reassuring. "I promised I'd never leave your side," he said softly, handing her a mug. His hand brushed hers for a moment, and that small contact carried 1,000 unspoken words. "I know," she whispered. "I trust you." They sat together on her worn couch, talking and laughing as if the world beyond her apartment didn't exist. They reminisced about the college days, when everything had been simpler, about late-night debates that had stretched into dawn, about silly arguments that ended in laughter. Lillian felt safe, cocooned in the comfort of familiarity, believing that nothing could touch them, that nothing could shake the bond they had built. But life has a way of reminding you that comfort is fragile. By the afternoon, the first cracks appeared. A letter slipped from the stack on her counter, the landlord's stern handwriting demanding immediate payment of overdue rent, threatening eviction. Her chest tightened. Just as she reached for her phone to call James, a notification appeared, a message from him. "Lillian, I can't right now. Things are complicated. I'll try to come soon." "Soon?" she muttered, staring at the screen. What does that even mean? She tried to focus on her work, on the mundane tasks of daily life, but the words gnawed at her. Days turned into nights. Calls went unanswered. Messages were ignored. The warmth she had felt that morning dissipated like smoke, leaving her in a haze of worry and betrayal. Friends offered advice, to be patient, to wait, to not take it personally, but their words felt hollow. No one could feel the weight of her heartache, the slow tightening of anxiety that had begun to consume her. Even the small comforts of home, her favorite chair, the scent of her coffee, the soft hum of the city outside, felt distant, hollow, as if life itself had shifted in a way she couldn't control. Despite it all, she clung to a fragile thread of hope. She remembered mornings when James had smiled and said, "No matter what happens, I'm here. You'll never face this alone." That memory became a lifeline, a tiny ember she refused to let die, a reminder that even in the darkness, some promise of light remained. Yet the world was about to test her in ways she had never imagined. Bills would pile higher, friends would disappoint, and her own heart would be forced to confront the unbearable reality of solitude. Each morning she woke, she asked herself the same question. How much can one person endure before hope itself begins to fade? She didn't yet know that her life was about to shift dramatically, that circumstances beyond her control would challenge her courage, reshape her perspective, and force her to confront both loss and unexpected blessings. But in that quiet, lonely apartment, as the sun climbed higher in the sky, Lillian held onto that small ember of hope, the memory of a promise that had once felt unbreakable, and stepped forward into the uncertainty of what was to come. CTA, stay tuned for Act 2, to see how life pushes Lillian to her limits, and how hope begins to carve a path through despair. The days that followed were a blur of unanswered calls and unopened letters. Lillian's apartment, once a haven of comfort, felt smaller by the hour, every corner echoing with the absence of the one person she had trusted most. She found herself pacing the living room at odd hours, coffee long gone cold, the aroma of uncertainty clinging to the air like smoke. She tried to immerse herself in work, typing endlessly on her laptop, answering emails with mechanical precision, but her mind kept drifting to James. Every notification sound made her heart leap. Every shadow on the street outside made her turn, expecting him to appear. But he never did. One evening, the knock came at the door. Lillian's chest fluttered with hope. But it wasn't him. It was a courier, holding an envelope addressed to her. Her fingers trembled as she opened it, revealing eviction papers, final warning notices, and a past due bill statement that she hadn't even remembered. The weight of reality pressed down on her, suffocating, relentless. She sank onto the couch, feeling a wave of despair crash over her. Tears welled in her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. Not yet. She had to find some remnant of strength, some fragment of hope to hold on to. She thought of James and the promises he had made, the words he had spoken with such sincerity. Were they lies, or had life simply taken him away from her in ways she couldn't understand? The next day, she decided to reach out to him one last time. She dialed his number, and after what felt like an eternity, his voice came through the line. Quiet, hesitant, almost foreign. "Lillian, I didn't want to be like this," James said, his voice cracking. I have responsibilities, problems I didn't want you to see. I thought I could handle it, but I'm so sorry." Her throat tightened. "James, you promised you'd never leave my side. Did that mean nothing?" I didn't leave because I wanted to. I left because I had no choice. Please believe me," he pleaded. The conversation ended with more questions than answers, leaving Lillian staring at the phone in disbelief. Her chest ached, her mind spun, and yet, somewhere in the turbulence of emotions, a stubborn spark of hope remained. In the following days, life became a storm she had to navigate alone. Work demanded more of her than ever. Friends offered help, but their solutions felt temporary, like bandages on a deep wound. Her bills continued to pile. Her phone remained silent most of the time, and the loneliness pressed in on her with relentless force. One rainy afternoon, soaked from the unexpected downpour, Lillian sat by her window, watching the water cascade down the glass in chaotic rivulets. She thought about all the promises life had made her, promises of love, of security, of a future filled with joy, and how quickly they had dissolved. But in that moment, amid the rain and the cold, she realized that her survival depended on her resilience. She could not wait for James to return. She could not rely on a promise alone. With renewed determination, she began to take control of the little things she could. She prioritized paying bills, contacted her landlord to arrange a payment plan, and organized her schedule so that every hour spent was a step toward regaining stability. Every small victory, a call returned, a payment confirmed, a smile from a colleague, became a reminder that she could withstand the storm. Even in the chaos, she kept James's memory alive, not as a crutch but as a symbol of hope that one day, perhaps, the life they had imagined together could still exist in some form. She didn't yet know how or if he would return, but she understood that hope alone would not sustain her. Action, courage, and resilience would. As night fell, Lillian sat with her journal, writing down her thoughts, her fears, and her small victories. She drew a deep breath, feeling the rain outside soften into a gentle drizzle. Somewhere in the distance, a dog barked, a car honked. The city continued its relentless rhythm, indifferent to her suffering, yet she felt a quiet sense of strength settling within her. Don't miss Act 3, where Lillian faces the most unexpected challenge yet, testing her courage, her heart, and her very sense of hope. The following week brought no relief, only the steady grind of uncertainty. Lillian had become a master of routines. Every morning she rose early, brewed her coffee, checked her emails, and planned her day meticulously. But no schedule could prepare her for the unexpected that life had in store. It came in the form of a letter from her company. A sudden reorganization meant her position was under review. The words blurred on the paper as she read them. "Due to budget adjustments, your role may be impacted. Please attend the meeting tomorrow morning." Her stomach knotted. Lillian had worked tirelessly for years, pouring her heart into every project, every presentation, every client call. And yet, despite her diligence, her stability now hung by a fragile thread. She spent the evening pacing, rereading the letter, trying to anticipate what tomorrow would bring. Sleep came in fits, haunted by visions of losing the job that had been her lifeline. Morning arrived with a pale, cold light. Lillian dressed carefully, choosing clothes that radiated confidence even when her heart was trembling. She walked to the office with a pounding chest, each step heavier than the last. Her hands trembled as she swiped her badge to enter, trying to hide the fear that had taken root in her stomach. The meeting room was quiet, a tension so thick it pressed against her chest. Her manager, normally warm and approachable, now wore a face carved from stone. "Lillian," he began, "we value your contributions, but the company must make difficult decisions." Her mind raced. She tried to keep her composure, nodding politely, hoping that her years of dedication would speak for themselves. But the words that followed were worse than she could have imagined. She had been reassigned to a project that was considered low priority, with little visibility and no opportunity for advancement. Her position, once a source of pride, now felt like a dead-end corridor. Lillian left the meeting room, feeling the familiar weight of despair pressing down again. She walked through the city streets, eyes cast down, mind spinning with what-ifs. What if James never returned? What if she failed at this new project? What if life had finally taken everything from her, just as it had promised? But as she sat in a quiet cafe to collect her thoughts, she noticed something that made her pause. A young woman struggling to carry a stack of books, papers tumbling from her arms. Without thinking, Lillian rushed to help her. "Here, let me help you," Lillian said, steadying the books. The girl looked up, startled, and then smiled with relief. "Thank you so much. I don't know what I would have done." In that small act of kindness, Lillian felt a spark of her own strength returning. Life could strip her of comfort, stability, and certainty, but it could not take her empathy, her courage, or her ability to act despite fear. Helping someone else reminded her that she still had agency, still had the power to make choices that mattered. That evening, Lillian returned home, exhausted but determined. She opened her journal, writing not only about her fear and frustration, but also about the small victories of the day. Helping a stranger, completing her work assignments, finding moments of laughter amidst stress. She realized that hope was not merely a passive feeling but a deliberate choice, to act, to endure, and to keep moving forward even when everything seemed against her. As night fell, she gazed out the window at the city lights, shimmering like distant stars. Somewhere out there, James was living his own struggles, and yet she clung to the belief that their paths might still converge. She didn't know how or when, but she resolved that she would meet whatever came next with courage. Weeks passed, and Lillian's life became a delicate balancing act between hope and survival. Her days were packed with work responsibilities, running errands, and paying bills, each task a small victory over the chaos that threatened to consume her. Yet the absence of James weighed on her more heavily than anything else. Every familiar place she passed, the cafe where he once smiled at her, the park where they had shared quiet afternoons, echoed with the memory of a promise unfulfilled. One evening, after an especially grueling day, Lillian returned home to find a letter slipped under her door. Her heart raced as she tore it open, expecting news from James, a sign, anything that would reassure her. But it wasn't from him. It was a notice from the bank. Her savings account had been frozen due to an overdue loan she had forgotten, leaving her with barely enough money to cover rent and necessities. The walls of her apartment seemed to close in. For the first time in weeks, Lillian allowed herself to crumble. She sank to the floor, clutching her head, tears spilling freely. Why is life so relentless? Why must I fight every single day just to exist? Hours passed before she could lift herself from the floor. Exhaustion and despair left her numb, yet deep inside, a tiny ember refused to die. Lillian remembered the small victories from the past weeks, helping the girl with her books, completing her work assignments, surviving moments she thought she couldn't endure. She realized that even when life crushed her, she had survived every challenge so far. The next morning brought no reprieve. At work, she was blindsided by a sudden meeting with the project director. "Lillian, we've reviewed your performance, and it's not enough. We have no choice but to reassign your responsibilities entirely. You'll be taking on a role in client outreach with minimal support. This is your last chance to prove yourself." Her stomach sank, but she nodded. She had no choice but to fight, even when every bone in her body screamed to surrender. She left the office, feeling the weight of despair pressed down harder than ever before. That evening, she walked aimlessly through the streets, the cold wind biting at her face. Her thoughts spiraled, fears of failure, abandonment, and loneliness. She stopped near a bridge overlooking the river, watching the water surge below, silvered by the fading light. For a moment, she imagined letting go, giving in to the temptation to surrender to the pressure, the fear, the exhaustion. But then she remembered something James once said. Strength is not just in surviving the easy days. Strength is what you discover when you refuse to give up, even when everything falls apart. Her chest tightened with a renewed sense of purpose. She couldn't rely on promises, she realized. She had to rely on herself. She would rise, no matter the cost. And somehow, someway, she believed hope would meet her on the other side of the storm. Returning home, Lillian faced one final challenge that night. Her broken oven had flooded the kitchen, water spilling across the tiles. She moved quickly, mopping up the mess, scrubbing floors, and patching the sink with whatever tools she could find. Her body ached. Her hands were raw. But with each task completed, a sense of victory, however small, returned. She realized that even in the smallest triumphs, life could offer a spark of hope. Exhausted but resolute, she sank into her chair by the window, rain beginning to fall outside. The sound was soothing, a rhythmic reminder that life would continue, no matter the trials. Somewhere out there, James was living his own challenges, and yet she clung to the belief that someday, the promises they once shared could converge with her resilience and courage. CTA, don't miss Act 5, where Lillian's journey reaches its climax, and the hope she has held onto for so long finally faces the ultimate test. The dawn broke with a soft golden light, painting the city in hues of possibility. Lillian had spent the night reflecting, her mind exhausted but her heart determined. Every trial, every heartbreak, every lonely evening had brought her here, stronger, wiser, and more resilient than she had ever imagined. The morning began like any other. She brewed her coffee, arranged her papers, and prepared to face the day with the quiet determination she had cultivated over months of struggle. But today, something felt different. The air carried a tension she couldn't quite place, a whisper of change. As she walked to her small office space, balancing her laptop and notebooks, she noticed a familiar figure waiting near the corner cafe. Her heart skipped a beat. It was James. "Lillian," he said softly, his eyes glistening with unspoken emotion. "I'm here. I never stopped thinking about you. I failed to be there when you needed me most, but I'm here now." The years of pain and longing collided in Lillian's chest, a whirlwind of anger, relief, and love. She wanted to scream at him, to demand answers, to shake him for every moment of absence. But she didn't. Instead, she simply looked at him, her eyes reflecting everything she had endured and everything she had become. "I've fought every day without you," she said, her voice steady despite the tears threatening to fall. "I've survived when it felt impossible, and I've learned that hope isn't just a promise. It's what we build with our own hands, every single day." James nodded, swallowing hard. "I see that now. I see everything you've endured, and I am so proud of you. You are more than I ever imagined. And if you'll let me, I want to be part of the life you fought so hard to create." For the first time in months, Lillian felt the heavy fog of uncertainty lift. She realized that life had tested her in unimaginable ways, but it had not broken her. Every challenge, every lonely night, every fear had forged a strength she hadn't known existed. And now, finally, the person who had once promised to never leave her side had returned, not to rescue her, but to walk beside the woman she had become. In the following weeks, Lillian's life began to shift. Her work stabilized, her relationships deepened, and her apartment, once a symbol of struggle, became a home filled with warmth and laughter. She and James rebuilt their bond, not as it had been, but stronger, tempered by hardship, grounded in mutual respect, and filled with genuine love. One rainy evening, sitting together on her couch with steaming mugs in hand, Lillian realized how far she had come. The rain tapped against the window, a soft rhythm that mirrored her own heartbeat. She looked at James, then at the city outside, and whispered, "We survived. We really survived." James reached for her hand, squeezing it gently. "Yes, we did, and we'll continue to survive, together." Lillian smiled, letting the weight of the past months dissolve. She had learned that hope is not a passive feeling. It is a choice, an action, a refusal to let despair define you. Life had taken much from her, but it had given back something far greater: resilience, courage, and the knowledge that love and hope, when nurtured, can endure even the harshest storms. As night fell, the city lights glittered like distant stars, and Lillian felt a sense of peace she had never known before. The trials of the past had not defeated her. They had prepared her to embrace the future fully, with open eyes and an unbreakable heart. CTA. If you were inspired by Lillian's journey, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And join us for more stories of hope, resilience, and the power of never giving up.